The Oceanic Titan arrived carrying $200 million in time-sensitive electronics and perishables, and I was the only operator on the East Coast certified to handle its volatile loading system. But when Carter White, the new director of operations, decided the docks were a man's world, he fired me on the spot. He thought he was cutting costs. Instead, he initiated a countdown that would cost him his career, his fortune, and his freedom. The Port of New Jersey doesn't sleep. It just hums at different frequencies. At 5:00 a.m., the frequency was a low, vibrating bass note, the sound of diesel engines idling and the Atlantic Ocean slapping against the concrete pilings. I sat inside the cab of Gantry Crane 4, suspended 150 feet above the deck of the Oceanic Titan. From up here, the semi-trucks looked like matchbox cars, and the stevedores in their high-vis vests looked like neon ants. My hands rested lightly on the joysticks. I didn't just operate this machine, I felt it. The ZPMC Superpost Panamax crane was a beast of steel and hydraulics, capable of lifting 65 tons without breaking a sweat, but it required a surgeon's touch. "Unit 4, you're clear for the lift," the radio crackled. It was Jack, the shift foreman. Good man. Nervous, though, he'd been nervous all week. "Copy that, Jack. Dropping the spreader," I said, my voice calm. I began the descent. The container below was marked with red hazard diamonds. High priority, temperature-controlled pharmaceuticals and prototype microchips. $200 million worth of cargo sat on the ship, and it had to be offloaded within a 48-hour window before the contractual penalties kicked in. I was halfway through the maneuver when the radio clicked again, but it was Jack. "Unit 4, power down, immediate halt." The voice was nasal, unfamiliar, and dripping with an unearned authority. I paused the spreader bar 10 feet above the container. "Identify," I said. "This is Director White. Bring the cab to the maintenance platform immediately. Do not lift that container." I frowned. Carter White. The new guy. The rumor mill said he was the nephew of a board member, a 32-year-old MBA graduate who had never held a tool heavier than a Montblanc pen. He'd been on the job for 3 days. "Director, we are on a tight schedule." "This cargo is." "I didn't ask for a weather report more. I gave you an order. Bring it down now." I clenched my jaw, the leather of my gloves creaking. "Copy, coming down." I secured the crane and took the long elevator ride down to the deck. When I stepped out into the humid morning air, Jack was standing there, looking at his boots. Next to him was a young man in a suit that cost more than my first car. The suit was navy blue, tailored tight, and completely out of place among the grease and grime of the docks. He wasn't even wearing a hard hat. "Gabriella Moore?" Carter White asked, looking at a tablet without making eye contact. "That's me," I said, crossing my arms. I was 48 years old, with calluses on my hands and grease under my nails. I'd been working these docks since Carter was in diapers. "You're relieved of duty," he said, swiping a finger across the screen. "Permanently." The noise of the port seemed to drop away. "Excuse me." "We're restructuring," Carter said, finally looking up. His eyes were cold, dead sharks. "I've been reviewing the payroll. You're the highest paid operator on the roster. It's inefficient. We need to lean out the workforce. Modernize." "Inefficient?" I laughed, a sharp barking sound. "I'm the highest paid because I'm the only one certified for Class A hazardous lifts and the new automated locking systems. You fire me, who moves that box?" Carter smirked. "It's a crane, Moore. It's not a spaceship. I have 3 guys ready to step in who cost half of what you do. Besides..." He looked me up and down, his lip curling in distaste. "The docks are heavy work, rough work. Maybe it's time you went home and let the men handle the heavy lifting." The sexism wasn't even subtle. It was a slap in the face. "Carter," Jack stepped in, his voice trembling. "She's right. The union contract says..." "The union contract says I can terminate for operational restructuring," Carter snapped. He held out a white envelope. "Here's your notice. 2 weeks severance. Generous, considering." I looked at the envelope. Then I looked at the massive ship behind him. "You have no idea what you're doing," I said quietly. "I'm saving this company money," Carter replied. "Hand over your badge." I didn't argue, I didn't scream. That's what amateurs do. I reached into my back pocket, pulled out my security badge, and dropped it into his outstretched palm. "You're making a mistake," I said, my voice steady. "That container requires a dual-lock engage sequence. If you try to lift it with standard protocol, the sensors will lock the chassis. The ship won't move." Carter laughed. It was a dry, condescending sound. "Don't try to tech talk me to save your job more. I've read the manuals." "Reading the manual and feeling the wind shear at 100 feet are two different things," I countered. "Yeah, well, you don't have to worry about the wind anymore," Carter sneered. He leaned in closer, invading my personal space. He smelled of expensive cologne and stale coffee. "Go home, Grandma, knit something. Leave the industry to the people who have the stamina for it." "Grandma, I wasn't a grandmother. My daughter, Harper, was 22 and finishing her master's degree in digital marketing. I was in the best shape of my life. I did CrossFit 4 times a week to keep my core strength up for the cab. But to a man like Carter White, any woman over 30 was ancient, and any woman on a construction site was an obstacle." I looked at Jack. He was pale, his eyes wide with panic. He knew exactly what was about to happen. "Jack," I said, nodding to him, "it's been an honor." "Gabby," Jack started, but Carter cut him off. "Escort her off the premises, Jack. If she's not past the gate in 10 minutes, call security." I turned on my heel and walked toward the locker rooms. My locker, number 404, was covered in stickers from 30 years of service. Union badges, safety awards, a picture of Harper at her graduation. I packed my gear slowly. My specialized grip gloves, my thermos, my steel-toed boots. As I walked through the yard toward the exit gate, the sun was fully up. The heat was rising off the asphalt. I could see the other guys watching me. Whispers were already spreading. "Gabby's out." The new suit fired Gabby. I reached the gate and swiped my badge one last time to clock out. The light turned red. Access denied. He had deactivated me before I even left the property. I walked to my truck, a beat-up Ford F-150 that I kept running with my own 2 hands. I climbed in, threw my gear on the passenger seat, and gripped the steering wheel. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of the harbor one last time. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Jack. "He's putting Miller in the seat." "Miller doesn't have the certs." I typed back, "Not my circus, Jack, not my monkeys." But as I drove away, watching the towering silhouette of the oceanic titan in my rearview mirror, I knew it wasn't over. Carter White had just pulled the pin on a grenade, and he was too arrogant to realize he was still holding it. I wasn't going to knit. I was going to watch him burn. 24 hours later, I was in my kitchen making coffee when Harper walked in. She was wearing her pajamas, her laptop tucked under her arm. "Mom," she said, looking at her screen, "why is Port Stuck trending on Twitter?" I poured the coffee, the dark liquid swirling in the mug. "Is it?" "Yeah, and oh my God, is this your ship?" She turned the laptop toward me. It was a drone shot, likely taken by a local news crew. The oceanic titan was sitting exactly where I had left it. But now, there was a line of trucks backed up for 3 miles outside the port gates. "That's the one," I said, taking a sip. "The caption says, 'Global supply chain halted due to technical difficulties at NJ Port,'" Harper read. "Mom, did you break the port?" "I didn't break anything," I said, leaning against the counter. "I just stopped fixing it." I explained everything. The firing, the grandma comment, the uncertified crew. Harper's eyes narrowed. She was a sweet girl, but she had my temper. "He called you grandma, that corporate leech." Her fingers started flying across her keyboard. "I'm going to look him up." "Don't bother," I said. "He's nobody." "He's not nobody, Mom. Oh, wow." Harper whistled. "Carter White, former VP of a failed crypto startup, sued twice for workplace harassment, cases settled out of court. Daddy got him this job. His uncle is on the board of Trans Global Logistics." "Nepotism," I muttered. "Figures." "Mom, look at this." Harper pointed at a maritime traffic map on her screen. "The ship hasn't moved an inch. Why?" "Because Miller, the guy they replaced me with, tried to lift the container," I explained. "But he didn't have the digital key for the dual lock system." The crane's computer probably thinks it's being hijacked. It went into hard lockdown. It freezes the hydraulics. You need a master operator code to reset it. And let me guess, Harper grinned, a wicked glint in her eye. You're the only one with the code. Me and the manufacturer in Shanghai, I said. And Shanghai is 14 hours ahead. They won't answer the phone until tonight. By then, the temperature control on those pharmaceuticals will fail. My phone rang. I looked at the caller ID, unknown number. Don't answer it yet, Harper whispered. Let them sweat. I wasn't planning on it, I said. I let it ring. The phone rang again immediately, and again. By noon, I had 17 missed calls, 3 from Jack, 10 from the main office number, 4 from a number I didn't recognize, probably Carter's personal cell. At 1:00 p.m., a news alert popped up on the TV in the living room. A reporter was standing in front of the port gates. Chaos at the docks today as the massive oceanic Titan remains stranded. Sources say a critical software failure has paralyzed operations. With millions in perishable goods at risk, tensions are rising. We reached out to Director Carter White for comment, but he declined. I sat on the couch and put my feet up. Harper, I said, pass me the popcorn. Mom, Harper said, looking up from her laptop. I just checked the union bylaws online. If they operate that crane with uncertified staff and the cargo spoils, do you know who is liable? The company. Usually, she said, but there's a clause here about gross negligence and willful misconduct. If a director knowingly bypasses safety protocols, the liability pierces the corporate veil. She looked at me. Mom, he could lose everything, his house, his cars, everything. I smiled. It was a cold, sharp smile. Then we need to make sure he digs the hole a little deeper, I said. It's time to make a phone call. To who? An old friend, I said, someone who owes me a life. I let the chaos on the dock simmer for another 2 hours before I made the call. The TV was still blaring news updates about the mystery malfunction at the port, and my phone had buzzed itself off the coffee table twice. I scrolled past the frantic messages from Jack and the increasingly desperate voicemails from the Port Authority. I found the number I needed, saved under simply Elia's. It rang once. Gabby, the voice on the other end, was smooth, deep, and instantly recognizable. Elia's Thorne didn't waste time with pleasantries. I saw the news. The Titan is stuck. Is this you? It's not me, Elias, I said, leaning back into the sofa cushions. It's the new director of operations, a kid named Carter White. White, the nephew? Elias chuckled. I've heard the name. Inherited his position, not his brains. Let me guess, he tried to cut costs. He fired me this morning, I said flatly. Told me to go home and knit. Put an uncertified scab in the seat of my gantry. There was a silence on the line, a heavy, dangerous silence. Elias Thorne was one of the most feared maritime lawyers on the East Coast, but 20 years ago, he was just a skinny kid working the lines. I pulled him out from under a snapping cable that would have cut him in half. He never forgot it. He put an uncertified operator in a Class A hazardous lift. Elias asked, his voice dropping an octave. That's not just stupid, Gabby. That's criminal negligence. And the cargo is temperature-sensitive pharmaceuticals, I added. $200 million worth. The clock is ticking. I heard the sound of papers shifting in the background. Elias was already working. Listen to me carefully, Gabby. Do not answer their calls. Do not go back to the port. If they ask you to fix it, tell them you are no longer an employee and cannot access company property without a contract. A contract? A consulting contract, Elias said, the smile evident in his voice. If they want you back in that seat to save their cargo, they're going to have to rehire you, but not as an employee, as an independent contractor, at a rate that reflects the urgency of the situation. How much? I asked. Let me handle that, Elias said. But first, we need leverage. I need you to send me everything. Every email, every text, every safety report you filed that they ignored. And Gabby. Yeah. Did he give you a reason for firing you in writing? Just restructuring, I said, but he made comments about my age, about it being a man's job. Witnesses. Jack the foreman. Perfect, Elias said. I'm going to draft a little something, stay by the phone, and whatever you do, don't help them yet. Let the rot set in a little longer. By 4:00 p.m., the situation at the port had escalated from a headache to a full-blown crisis. The local news had a helicopter circling the oceanic Titan, broadcasting live footage of the motionless crane. My phone rang again. This time, I answered. It was Elias. I've done some digging on Mr. White, Elias said. It's worse than we thought. How so? He's not just incompetent, Elias said. He's desperate. I pulled his financials. He's leveraged to the hilt, mortgages on 2 properties, massive credit card debt, and some very risky investments in offshore accounts. He needs this job to pay for his lifestyle, and more importantly, he needs this shipment to clear to get his quarterly bonus. So he cut me to boost his margins, I realized. Exactly. He thought he could swap you out for a cheaper operator, pocket the difference in the budget, and look like a genius to the board. But he didn't count on the specialized lockout protocols. He didn't read the manual, I said. He never does, Elias replied. But here's the kicker. The insurance policy for the cargo. It has a specific exclusion clause for unqualified personnel. If the insurance company finds out he used an uncertified operator, they won't pay a dime on the spoiled goods. Meaning the company is on the hook for the full $200 million. Meaning Carter is on the hook, Elias corrected. If we can prove he knew the operator was uncertified and ordered the lift anyway, which he did, then the company can sue him personally for gross negligence to recover their losses. They'll strip him clean. So what's the play? I asked. We wait for the panic to peak, Elias said. Then we offer a solution, but on our terms. I'm drafting a contract now. When they call you back, and they will, you tell them to speak to your legal representative. You're enjoying this, I noted. Gabby, Elias said softly, you saved my life. Watching this arrogant little tyrant destroy himself is the least I can do to repay you. Night fell over the harbor, but the lights of the port burned bright. The oceanic Titan was still stuck. The temperature inside the refrigerated containers was creeping up. Every hour that passed brought the cargo closer to total spoilage. I sat on my porch with Harper, watching the distant glow of the city. My phone was silent now. They had stopped calling, which meant they were desperate enough to try something stupid. Mom, look at this, Harper said, holding up her phone. It was a live stream from a worker on the docks. The caption read, "Boss trying to bypass the safety lock. This is gonna be bad." In the video, I saw Carter White screaming at a group of mechanics gathered around the base of the crane. He was waving his arms, his suit jacket off, tie loosened. He looked frantic. Just cut the power. Carter was yelling, "Reset the whole system." "We can't, sir," one of the mechanics shouted back. "The backup generators will kick in automatically." "It's a fail-safe." "I don't care about the fail-safe. I want that container off this ship." Carter grabbed a wrench from a toolbox and marched toward the electrical panel. "Oh no," I whispered. "What is he doing?" Harper asked, eyes wide. "He's trying to force a hard reboot," I said. "If he cuts the main breaker while the load is suspended, the magnetic locks might disengage." "And drop the container." "No," I said. "The emergency brakes will slam on, but the sudden stop, it could snap the cable." On the screen, Carter yanked the lever on the panel. Sparks flew. The lights on the crane flickered and died. For a second, there was silence. Then, a terrible screech of metal on metal echoed through the phone speaker. The massive cable holding the container shuddered violently. The container dropped 10 feet, then jerked to a halt as the emergency brakes bit into the drum. The camera shook as the worker filming it ran for cover. "He just voided the warranty," I said, staring at the frozen image. "And he definitely just tripped the catastrophic failure sensors." "Is the cargo okay?" Harper asked. "Maybe," I said, "but the crane is dead. It won't move now without a factory reset code, and the only person who knows that code is you, Harper finished. My phone rang. It was Jack. I answered this time. Gabby, Jack's voice was breathless. You gotta come down here. He broke it. He really broke it this time. The whole rig is locked down. The panel is smoking. And the temperature alarm on the container just went off. I saw Jack, I said. He's asking for you, Jack said. He's screaming for someone to get that woman back here. Put him on, I said. There was a fumble, and then Carter's voice came on the line. He sounded different, panicked, shrill. Moore, get your ass back here, now. Director White, I said, my voice ice cold. I believe you relieved me of duty, permanently. I'm rehiring you. Just get down here and fix this mess. I'm afraid I can't do that, I said. I'm not an employee anymore, and I have a very strict policy about working for people who insult me. I'll pay you double, triple, just get here. If you want my help, Carter, I said, you'll have to talk to my agent. Agent? What agent? Mr. Elias Thorne, I said. I'll text you his number, have your lawyers call him, and Carter. What? He screamed. The price just went up. The next morning, the sun rose over a disaster. The Oceanic Titan was still paralyzed. The queue of trucks now stretched 5 miles down the turnpike, a snake of idling diesel engines and angry drivers. The local news had upgraded their coverage to breaking news, with reporters speculating about supply chain shortages for the upcoming holiday season. I was in my kitchen, calmly making scrambled eggs when my phone rang. It was Elias. They're cracking, he said, his voice clipped and professional. Legal just sent over a draft contract. They want you back immediately as an emergency consultant. They're offering 3 times your old hourly rate. 3 times? I scoffed, sprinkling pepper on the eggs. That's cute. I told them the same thing, Elias said. I countered with a flat fee, $50,000 for the job, plus a written apology. $50,000. Harper looked up from her laptop, eyes wide. And full reinstatement of your pension and benefits, retroactive to the date of termination, Elias added. Non-negotiable. Did they bite? I asked. They're screaming, Elias chuckled. But they don't have a choice. The manufacturer in Shanghai confirmed that a factory reset requires a physical key turn from a certified operator. They can't just fly someone in. You're the only one on the continent with the biometric clearance for that specific crane model. What about Carter's? He's in a meeting with the board right now, Elias said, trying to spin this as a software glitch. But I sent over the video of him pulling the breaker. They know. Good, I said. Let him sweat a little longer. One more thing, Elias said, his tone serious. Mr. Yamato is flying in. I froze. Mr. Yamato represented the conglomerate that owned the cargo. He was a terrifyingly efficient man who didn't tolerate incompetence. If Yamato was coming personally, this was about to get very ugly very fast. When does he land? 2 hours, Elias said. He wants to meet you at the pier, personally. I hung up and looked at Harper. Get dressed, kiddo, we're going to the docks. When we arrived at the port, the atmosphere was electric. Security guards were trying to hold back a crowd of reporters. Angry truck drivers were honking their horns in a deafening chorus. But the real show was near the crane. Carter White was pacing back and forth, his expensive suit rumpled, sweat staining his collar. He was shouting into a phone, his face red. Next to him stood a terrified-looking young man, Miller, the uncertified operator he'd tried to replace me with. I don't care what the manual says. Carter screamed. Just bypass the sensor. I can't, Miller pleaded, looking ready to cry. The system is locked out. It thinks we're trying to steal the cargo. I parked my truck and stepped out, wearing my work boots and my favorite flannel shirt. Harper followed, camera phone ready. Carter spotted me instantly. He stormed over, pointing a finger in my face. You, he yelled, you did this. You rigged the system. Watch the finger, Carter, I said calmly. I didn't rig anything. I followed safety protocols. You're the one who tried to hotwire a 65-ton machine like it was a stolen Honda. Fix it, he demanded. Right now, or I'll have you arrested for sabotage. Sabotage? I laughed. I was fired, remember. I don't work here. I'm just a private citizen enjoying the view. You have the code, Carter hissed. Give it to me. The code is biometric, I said, tapping my temple. It's linked to my retina scan. You can't just type it in. I have to be in the chair. Then get in the chair. Not until my demands are met, I said, crossing my arms. And not until I see a signed contract. Contract? Carter spluttered. We're losing $1 million an hour just to your job. It's not my job anymore, I reminded him. You made sure of that, remember. Go home, Grandma. The color drained from his face. He looked at the massive ship, then back at me. He knew he was beaten, but his pride wouldn't let him admit it. Fine, he snarled. I'll sign whatever, just get up there. Not so fast, a voice boomed from behind us. We turned. A black limousine had pulled up to the curb. The door opened, and a man in an immaculate gray suit stepped out. He was older, with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. Mr. Yamato? The silence that fell over the dock was instant. Even the truck drivers seemed to sense the shift in power. Mr. Yamato walked toward us with a quiet, terrifying grace. 2 assistants followed him, carrying briefcases. Director White, Yamato said, his voice soft but carrying clearly over the wind. I am disappointed. Carter swallowed hard. Mr. Yamato, I can explain. It's a personnel issue. A disgruntled former employee sabotaged the... Stop, Yamato said, raising a hand. I do not wish to hear excuses. I wish to know why my cargo, worth $200 million, is currently rotting in the sun. He turned to me. His gaze was sharp, evaluating. You are Gabriella Moore. Yes, sir, I said, standing tall. My logistics team tells me you are the only operator certified for this lift, Yamato said. Is this correct? Yes, sir, certified and current. And yet, Yamato looked at Carter, you were terminated yesterday morning. Why? Restructuring, Carter squeaked. Cost-cutting measures. Cost-cutting, Yamato repeated, looking up at the paralyzed crane. This delay has already cost my company $5 million in penalties. Is that your idea of saving money, Director? Carter opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Miss Moore, Yamato said, turning back to me, can you retrieve my cargo safely? Yes, sir, I said, but the system is in hard lockout. It will take a manual reset and a slow extraction, about 4 hours of work. Do it, Yamato said. My company will cover your fee, whatever it is. Thank you, sir, I said, but first, there's the matter of my contract. Handled, Yamato said, snapping his fingers. One of his assistants stepped forward and handed me a document. Your lawyer, Mr. Thorne, sent this over. It is signed and authorized by the Port Authority Board. $50,000, full reinstatement, and a formal apology. I looked at Carter. He looked like he was about to vomit. Thank you, I said, taking the pen. I signed it on the hood of my truck. Now, Yamato said, please save my shipment. I walked toward the crane elevator. As the doors closed, I saw Carter White standing alone on the asphalt, looking very small against the backdrop of the massive ship he had failed to control. The climb was familiar, the smell of grease and salt air, the hum of the generator as I keyed in my access code. Retina scan complete. Welcome, Operator Moore. The screens flickered to life. The diagnostics ran, all systems green. I grabbed the radio. Unit 4 is online. Jack, are you there? Gabby, Jack's voice cracked with relief. Thank God, we're ready when you are. Copy that, initiating reset sequence. Let's get this box on the ground. 3 hours later, the Oceanic Titan was lighter by 65 tons, and the pharmaceutical container was safely plugged into a backup generator on a flatbed truck. The temperature sensors were flashing green. The crisis was averted. I rode the elevator down from the crane cab, my legs a little shaky but my adrenaline pumping. As I walked across the tarmac, I saw a familiar face waiting for me. Elias Thorne leaned against his vintage Jaguar, arms crossed, looking pleased. Nice work, Gabby, he said, handing me a bottle of water. Yamato is impressed. He wants to discuss a permanent contract, directly with you, no middlemen. And Carter? I asked, taking a long drink. That's the best part, Elias grinned. Yamato called an emergency board meeting, right here, in the Port Authority conference room, in 20 minutes. Am I invited? You're the guest of honor, Elias said, and so am I as your legal counsel. We walked into the administration building together. The air conditioning was a welcome relief from the humid dock, but the tension in the hallway was thick enough to cut with a knife. Secretaries were whispering. Executives were running back and forth with stacks of paper. We entered the boardroom. Carter White sat at the head of the long mahogany table, looking pale and sweaty. Around him sat the board members, stiff, serious men and women in suits. And at the far end, calm and terrifying, sat Mr. Yamato. Ah, Ms. Moore, Yamato said, gesturing to an empty chair. Please join us, Mr. Thorne as well. Carter glared at me, but he didn't say a word. He looked like a man waiting for the executioner's axe to fall. We have reviewed the incident report, the chairman of the board began, shuffling papers. Director White claims the crane malfunction was unforeseeable, a technical glitch. Is that so? Elias asked smoothly, placing a flash drive on the table. Because this footage clearly shows Director White attempting to bypass a safety lockout manually, an act that voids the manufacturer's warranty and violates federal maritime law. The chairman picked up the drive, his face darkening. Is this true, Carter? It was an emergency. Carter burst out. I was trying to save the shipment. The system was frozen. The system was frozen because you put an uncertified operator in the seat, I said calmly. The crane did exactly what it was designed to do. It protected the cargo from incompetence. And the cost? Yamato asked quietly. The cost of this, incompetence, including penalties, overtime, and emergency repairs, Elias said, consulting a notebook. The total damages are estimated at $7 million. The boardroom went silent. $7 million. That was more than the port's entire annual profit margin. This is unacceptable, the chairman said, slamming his hand on the table. Director White, you assured us this restructuring would save money. It would have. Carter insisted, if she hadn't sabotaged the equipment. Careful, Carter, Elias warned. Accusing my client of sabotage without proof is slander, and we're already suing you for wrongful termination. Carter slumped in his chair. He looked at his uncle, the board member who had gotten him the job. His uncle stared at the ceiling, refusing to make eye contact. I think we've heard enough, Yamato said, standing up. My company will not be doing business with this port as long as Mr. White is in charge. His judgment is severely lacking. The chairman nodded. Agreed. Carter, please clear out your office, effective immediately. Carter White was fired, but Elias wasn't done. There is one more matter, Elias said, pulling a thick document from his briefcase. The matter of personal liability. Excuse me, Carter blinked, confused. I was acting as an officer of the company. The corporate veil protects me. Not in cases of gross negligence and willful misconduct, Elias said, sliding the document across the table. You knowingly ordered an uncertified operator to perform a hazardous lift. You then attempted to bypass safety protocols yourself, causing damage to the equipment. That pierces the veil, Carter. You are personally liable for the damages. Personally, Carter laughed nervously. I don't have $7 million. We know, Elias said. We checked your assets, but you do have a house in the Hamptons, a condo in the city, a rather impressive collection of vintage cars, and a trust fund. You can't touch my trust fund. Carter shrieked. Actually, Elias said, tapping the document, under the terms of your employment contract, Clause 14, Section B, any damages resulting from criminal negligence are recoverable from personal assets, and since you violated federal safety regulations. Well. Carter looked at the document. His hands were shaking so hard the paper rattled against the table. This will ruin me, he whispered. You should have thought of that before you called my client Grandma, Elias said coldly. And one more thing, I added, leaning forward. That severance package you offered me, the 2 weeks' pay. Carter looked up, his eyes wide with fear. I think we can do better, I said. My new contract stipulates a consulting fee, retroactive to the moment you fired me, at triple time. Carter put his head in his hands. Mr. Yamato stood up and buttoned his jacket. It seems my business here is concluded. Ms. Moore, I look forward to working with you, directly. He shook my hand, nodded to the board, and walked out. The chairman looked at Carter, then at me. Ms. Moore, the board would like to offer you the position of interim director of operations, until we find a suitable replacement. I looked at Carter, broken and defeated. I looked at the board members, suddenly respectful. I'll think about it, I said. But first, I'm going to take my daughter out for a very expensive lunch, on the company card. 6 months later, the port was running smoother than it ever had. I sat on my porch, watching the sun set over the harbor. The air was cool, the water calm. A check for a very substantial consulting fee sat on the table next to my iced tea. Carter White had declared bankruptcy. His assets were seized to pay the damages. His reputation in the industry was destroyed. Last I heard, he was working as a junior analyst for a logistics firm in Ohio. Entry level. I didn't take the director job. I didn't want to sit in an office. I wanted to be in the cab, feeling the hum of the machine, doing the work I loved. But I did negotiate a new contract. I was now the senior operations consultant. I made my own hours, picked my own team, and trained the next generation of operators. Harper came out onto the porch, holding 2 glasses of lemonade. Hey, Mom, she said, sitting down next to me, checking the ship schedules. Always, I smiled. The Titan is coming back in next week. Yamato specifically requested me for the lift. Of course he did, Harper laughed. You're the best. We sat in silence for a moment, watching the ships move slowly across the horizon. You know, Harper said thoughtfully, he really thought he could just discard you, like an old part. He made a common mistake, I said. He confused value with cost. He saw a line item on a spreadsheet. He didn't see the years of experience, the instinct, the knowledge that keeps the whole thing running. Well, he sees it now, Harper said, from the unemployment line. I took a sip of my tea. The victory tasted sweet, but the lesson tasted even better. That's the thing about the docks, Harper, I said, looking out at the water. The sea doesn't care who your uncle is. The wind doesn't care about your degree. The only thing that matters is if you can do the job, and if you respect the work. I patted her hand. He didn't respect the work, and the work bit him back. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. A ship's horn blew in the distance, a deep, mournful sound that echoed across the water. It was the sound of commerce, of movement, of life. And I was right where I belonged. Malicious compliance entitled boss blue collar, # legal revenge logistics carmistery.